Roughly 9 million Jews lived all around Europe. The Jews were largely populated in Eastern European countries such as Poland, Soviet Union, Hungary, and Romania, but when Germany took power in 1930s, they became potential victims and their lives changed forever.
Hitler was an anti-Semite, which means he was a hater of Jews. He successfully managed to convince the Germans that the Jews were the ones to blame.
Historians have previously classified 6 types of anti-Semites. Number 1, they hate the Jews because they possess too much wealth and power. Number 2, it's because they arrogantly claim that they are the chosen people. Number 3, they are a convenient group to single out and blame for their mistakes. Number 4, because they killed Jesus. Number 5, it's because they are different than us. And number 6, it's because they are an inferior race.
Most victims were killed because of different religious groups, which Nazis wanted to wipe out. The Nazis murdered politicians, trade unionists, journalists, teachers, anyone who spoke against Hitler. Also, millions of non-Jewish victims died, such as Catholics from Poland, Serbs, soldiers from Soviet Union, and the Slavic people.
About 3 million Jews from Poland and 1 million Jews from the Soviet Union were killed due to the Holocaust. Some Jews were overworked and starved, some were beat up. If the Nazis were bored, they would gather the Jews and shoot them for fun. On Hitler's birthday, a Jew was shot every hour for no reason. Some of the Jews died from being used for medical experiments, which was grotesque and horrific. For example, the Nazis wanted to see if people could still survive with muscles and bones misplaced, and these tests were done without painkillers. But most Jews were killed by being gassed in gas chambers.
The Holocaust ended in 1944 because the Americans, British, the Soviets, and other Allied forces drove into Germany and liberated the concentration camps. Although most of the Jews in the camps were killed off, there were still survivors. The Holocaust ended in 1944 because the Americans, British, the Soviets, and other Allied forces drove into Germany and liberated the concentration camps. Although most of the Jews in the camps were killed off, there were still survivors.
After the Jews were liberated, many of them went back to Poland to feel welcomed, but instead, they were faced with cold stares because the Poles had been influenced by the Nazis.
The Poles were enormously important to the Jews, yet the Poles were an anti-Semitic society. Many Jews had settled in Poland because they thought they found relative freedom from anti-Semitism and economic restrictions. But it turns out that many Holocaust survivors had negative attitudes toward the Poles based on their experiences as well as being witnesses of the destruction of the Jews caused by the Poles.
When the Jews went back to Poland, there were several pogroms which were violent anti-Jewish riots. The largest riot occurred in a town called Kielce in 1946, and the Poles killed about 50 Jews and beat up many more in that town.
The Jews were put out of business by the Poles and their houses were destroyed even after the Holocaust. These incidents that the Jews had to face made them feel very insecure and terrified, and slowly the Jews evacuated Poland and moved westward.